Hi, and welcome back to video number 7 of the 7 key attributes of top online marketers. So far we've covered 1, commitment, 2, focus, 3, coaching and mentoring, 4, prioritizing activities with income generation first, 5, they take fast action, and 6, a strong reason why. One thing that I noticed that all of them have in common, all the successful entrepreneurs have in common, is that they have a really strong reason why. So what is your reason why? Well, somebody spoke at the weekend telling this story, and it's quite an old story. You can find it on Google, and you can see there are lots of people that post it because it's quite a motivational story, and I'd love to share this with you. So it goes like this. There was a young man walking down the street, and it happened to see an old man sitting on the porch. Next to the old man was his dog, who was whining and whimpering, and the young man asked the old man, "What's wrong with your dog?" The old man said, "He's laying on a nail." And the young man asked, "Laying on a nail? Well, why doesn't he get up?" The old man replied, "It's not hurting bad enough." So, can you see at any point in your life or your business where this might be the case, where you might be just laying on a nail but it's not quite painful enough for you to get off it? Truth be told, I think all of us have been there. I definitely know there have been times when I've been laying on a nail but it's not been uncomfortable enough for me to get off it. And I spoke briefly earlier about my reason why. But part of it also was the being at the point where it was so painful that I didn't have enough money, and I was worried that we were going to be on the street, and what was going to happen to my son, who was 1 year old at the time. He's now 2. And am I going to be able to provide a future for him? And then seeing the struggles that I can see around with me with the baby boomer generation, where they've paid into a pension pot but they don't actually have a pension that's big enough to actually live on. So they're faced with a situation they can't actually retire. So what happens if they physically can't do their jobs? And then I looked at my situation where I've got no pension pot. I don't have any residual income that I could spend on building that wealth. I didn't have any assets that I had because I was struggling to pay my bills, let alone any extra that I could invest in anything. And I realised that if I carried on the way that I was carrying on, the future would be very, very dark. And it almost felt like there wasn't a future. And that was an awful feeling. It was very, very painful. It was very, very raw. And the more that I thought about it, the more that I felt deeply distressed. I judged myself. I felt that I was just the worst person on the face of the earth. But, it's something that I know that is very, very common, and many people have similar stories to mine. But also when you know that the onus is solely on you to earn and provide for your family, it adds that extra bit of pain to get you off that nail. And that's what I really want to share with you, is that your reason why has to be like when you've cut yourself and it's got a scab over it. It's got to have the sensation of having that scab ripped off and somebody rubbing salt in it. Your reason why needs to touch all of those raw emotions, because it will keep you motivated. And I know all the successful people that I've met so far, whether it's an online marketing or professional speaking or business owners, a lot of the really top successful people, they all have very similar painful stories, which has helped motivate them and stimulate them to get to where they are within their field. But they also capitalize on that story by writing it down, putting it in places where they're going to constantly see the story, because every time you see the story, and especially if it involves family members, I heard from somebody that faced a situation where a family member was going to be thrown out of their care home because their savings had come to an end and they physically couldn't pay the care home bills. So the only option was to make their business work, and they did, and they had amazing results. And another couple that were desperately trying to make ends meet, and they only had enough money for a week's worth of groceries, and the guy was in the market trying to buy the vegetables that would last the longest and would be stored the longest. And when he was in the market, he saw a guy that had was begging. He had no money, had nothing, and in that moment his mindset changed. He suddenly realised for the first time in his life that he was truly wealthy, and he gave half of the money to the guy that was sat there that had nothing, and he bought food for the rest of the half of the money that he had, and then the onus was on him to make his business work. And he is now a top earner with a really inspirational story, but it shows and emphasizes the point that your reason why needs to be powerful. If it's not powerful enough, you'll just be the dog that's whimpering and whining and sat on the nail and being uncomfortable but not wanting to change anything. You have to be pushed almost to the point where change has to happen because there is no other option. And a lot of people get comfortable in their discomfort, and I'm sure you know people in your life that constantly complain and complain and complain. Oh, this is so awful. Oh, this is so awful, and this happened to me. And people competing over who's had a worse experience of something. Oh, you've got a headache. Oh, well, I've had a headache for 5 days. Well, I've had a headache and my arm's painful, and I've had that for 90 days. You see what I'm getting at? It suddenly becomes this competition of pain, and yet it's still not uncomfortable enough for them to make the changes. I think that it comes down to people realising that if they don't make any changes, they're only going to stay exactly where they are now. Nothing's going to change. And if they need to bring change in their life, the only way of bringing change is by doing something different. Some people aren't ready to do that, but the people that are desperate to bring change because they've got a strong reason why, they'll move heaven and earth to get to where they want to get to. It's like the same analogy of having, if somebody held a gun to your head and told you needed to raise £10,000, otherwise they would pull the trigger. What would you do? You'd definitely find that £10,000 or $10,000 without a blink of an eye, because you've got the motivation now. You've got a good reason why as to why you need to do it. Or if a family member gets sick and you've got hospital fees, and the only option is to earn some extra money to pay for the hospital fees, to give you time freedom so you can spend time with them, that's motivation. That will get you to where you want to be and get you there quickly. If you're still in the state of excuses, or I can't, you don't have a big enough why to get you off your backside to get you taking action. And that might sound harsh, but ultimately that's the reality of it. So, have a strong reason why, write it down and post it everywhere, even, minimize it, laminate it, put a copy in your wallet, and, look at it. And if it's got family members that a part of your reason why, have a photo of them next to your story and post it everywhere where you're going to see it. Post it in your room so it's where you wake up in the morning, so you see it first thing in the morning when you're brushing your teeth, in your office. And keep posting it everywhere just to keep yourself motivated. And if you hit one of those challenges or you fall over, it will keep you motivated to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and get back on it and keep doing it. So that takes me to the end of video 7, and I will be back shortly with the last video, video 8.